Welcome back to the Mind and Money podcast. I'm Val, a financial planner.
And I'm Sherry, a financial coach. And today we're going to talk about a recent situation that I had. And I think it can be helpful if you have ADHD and you live with a partner or spouse and you can kind of feel some of their frustrations with how you're managing your money. Send them this episode with a heart emoji and say, please listen. So I had somebody book a free consultation. They were booking the consultation with the intention that their spouse would also attend and then lead to ideally working together to help the spouse with their finances. The spouse they weren't ready. They didn't attend the call. But it led to just spending a few minutes talking about what could she do to support the spouse with some of the challenges that they were having with managing their money, but also what can she do herself as a neurotypical spouse of an ADHDer to kind of mitigate some of the financial stress and maybe burden's not the right word, but of being in that situation. I just thought it was a really great conversation and I wanted to share that with you guys today. And hopefully this gets to the neurotypicals with ADHD partners. And one of the biggest things is they are in a situation where they have their finances separate. And this is going to be different wherever you live.
And dependent on the relationship.
But it does mitigate your risk in a lot of areas of the world to not combine finances and not ever be listed on their debts or their credit cards. So then it does give you some separation. Not everywhere. Some places you're going to be liable for their debt no matter what if something happens to them and they're not able to pay because you're married. But
it does make it harder having them separate but not being on the same page in terms of building together.
Yes. It depends how open that person is to conversations and support, but it's kind of like you can't help an ADHDer by telling them what to do or by telling them what you want them to do, because then they're going to resist it even more. So it's kind of like looking for those opportunities where they're open, and maybe that starts with them having a conversation about being frustrated or them having a conversation about, I can't pay X bill this month and I need your help with it. And in this situation, I believe she was the higher income earner and was basically carrying all of the household expenses, which then is obviously frustrating as a couple who's supposed to help each other out, but financially that just wasn't.
That resentment is starting to build.
Yeah. And that was the big thing too, is like, how do we have things in place so that resentment doesn't build? Because we've seen the statistics on how much of an impact money has on relationship breakdowns and divorce and all of those things. And the reality probably is that if you have a partner and you're on the complete opposite page financially, it could be a slow walk towards the breakup or divorce. So it's like, what can you do to turn that around? And dealing with the resentment is a big part of it. And I think just switching your reality to being your actual reality in your mind versus what you want to be the reality. So in this situation, I believe, we didn't look at her money and break it down, but I believe she was able to financially carry the household.
Right.
But then, so it's like, instead of thinking that he's going to contribute every month or every time he gets paid, just switching that to like, you know what, this is what I have to do financially so that the household is okay. And then, if he does chip in, it's just a nice to have. But I could feel her frustration. And
totally.
And I think in some circumstances where there's a household where one person is managing the money, and if it's the neurotypical managing the money, that can often create
animosity
and like that parent-child relationship where you're wagging your finger at your ADHD spouse or partner that you did this and you did that, and here's the impact that it had to our finances. And
money's so important to talk about too before you get together.
It is really important to talk about before you get together. So thinking about those expectations, and I've seen some TikToks that make me cringe a little bit, to the point where people, like some of them are from mortgage brokers who, when you go to apply for a mortgage, all of your financial
Yes.
skeletons come out of the closet, and situations where one spouse is like, don't tell my spouse about this
consumer
debt.
proposal, this bankruptcy, this debt.
And it's like, well, if I have to tell you guys that you don't qualify for a mortgage
or as much of a mortgage,
they're going to ask why.
And if it's already being built on secrecy, don't buy a house together.
So if you have a spouse or partner
or loved one, like this could be a child too.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you have a loved one that has ADHD and you're watching them and you're like cringing at their financial management skills or habits, how can we help them?
Just by, I think, sprinkling in the financial knowledge and starting to openly talk about it and encourage them to talk about it as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does come down to education, like not knowing and not feeling comfortable asking for help. But if you start talking about, oh, hey, I have this credit card and this is what I do with it, and it can make those conversations more acceptable to come out in the open. And if you're talking about money and how you feel about it, it can encourage them to talk about it too. But if you're talking about healthy habits or things that you do, that can also get the gears turning in their brains, because it's like, oh, I didn't realize that there are people that pay off their credit card every month and don't carry debt, or that there's people that don't use credit cards. And I think that's one way, especially if it's a young person in your life, if they have a credit card, really talking about best practices in using it and encouraging them to keep a low limit or to not use it or avoid credit cards altogether, because it can definitely be a challenge when it comes to, getting into trouble and spending money we don't have. Is a credit card that leads lots of ADHD folks to future debt. And yeah, it's just support them, encourage them.
And ask if they want you to lean in. Like, do they want to share it with you so you can help them? Right? Because sometimes just giving advice and not really knowing if it lands for their situation or their habits, being like, do you want help? Do you want to look at it together?
Yep.
Like, you don't have to go to the doctor's office alone. I'll go with you. I'll body double. I'll sit in it with you.
Yep. And body doubling is a big thing, and finding ways to help provide accountability for your loved one. And maybe it's, they want to have a credit card, but they don't want to have it easily accessible. So you hang on to it and you guys work together to create circumstances where I'm going to give you back the credit card. But then it's also like, then I'm becoming the barrier, and that can create animosity too. So if I give you my credit card and I say, don't give it back to me unless it's spending on something that like we deem together as essential, and then we're having a conversation and I'm like, yeah, the red light mask is essential. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Or the Starbucks gift card is essential. So it then can create tension. So it's figuring out what's going to work to help you support them. But the body doubling could be a big one. Like, hey, I look at my finances every Friday and I do it at this time. And whether that's virtual or in person, do you want to spend half an hour together every Friday and work on our finances together and track where money went and make sure that we've got enough money to get us till next payday or the end of the month? And I think this bleeds into a lot into just in life. If you are a neurotypical who lives with somebody who has ADHD, what ways can you support them and how can you kind of fill in those gaps? Like a big one in my household is that my husband is predominantly the putter aware of leftovers after dinner because I forget. And there have been times when, and usually it's like I cook, you put away, or you do the dishes, but it's like it doesn't really matter who cooks. It's kind of
Sherry
something that
does not put away.
He's fallen into, because there's a couple of times when there's nothing worse than you get up the next morning and you see
wasted food,
like the pan of something or other on the stove that was supposed to be leftovers for a couple of days, and now it's like,
that'll give me food poisoning if I do that. So
yeah, that's just garbage now, and there's a huge cost impact too. And it's like,
and time.
What things are we prone to forget, or what things are we prone to avoid the most? And how can a neurotypical partner support? Like for us, I'll wash the laundry, I'll dry the laundry, but I'm like, task avoidance when it comes to folding it is huge. So that's another task that my husband has taken on. And then I can't avoid the putting it away because he folds it and leaves it out all over the bed. So then well, if I want to go to bed, I have to put it
Gotta put it
away.
away.
So, and then it's a 20-second task because
Yeah.
it's all there and ready. And another thing. Another thing. We have 2 vehicles, but we have a single driveway, and you can't get the first vehicle out unless the second vehicle's out. So we interchangeably drive the vehicles. And he has much different expectations of when a gas tank needs to be filled than I do.
Yeah, you and I probably carry the same idea.
I'm going somewhere 75 kilometers away, and the gas tank says I have 85 kilometers till it's empty.
I'm like,
so
we're in the plus.
we're good. And especially in the winter, don't let it get that blah, 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 blah. And it's like, so he predominantly fills up gas as well. And it's like, we've settled, and we've been together for freaking ever, right? So we've settled into the habits and the things that we do or don't do. And recently being diagnosed with ADHD, it's then helped me figure out, this tracks that he does this and I do this. And he's been very good at identifying areas that he can support by doing the things.
So it's compromise, it's support, and it's really looking at, okay, is this going to work?
Yep.
Right.
And trial and error. If you can identify challenges that your loved one has, just ask yourself, how can I help fill in the gaps without adding a significant burden to yourself too, right? Oh, if my partner has significant financial gaps and they're struggling, I'm going to pay off all their debts. But then that leaves you in a financial challenging spot. And then
doesn't solve the problem.
Right. Because if you haven't,
or the root.
Yeah. If they haven't made effort and changes with their finances, then
see you in 6 months.
Yeah. It's just that debt's going to build back up again. And then the resentment's going to like double, triple because you help them.
And the shame triples.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just lean in and try and tiptoe into support and not pushing too much, and helping without burdening yourself is really the key. And then also, this is not something I necessarily wanted to mention, but like, when is it too much for you? Like, when is it such a mental, physical burden on you that it's time to take a break and step away and
like give space and really reevaluate.
Yep. Yeah, it's heavy and it's hard, but if it's causing you financial burden and mental burden.
If this is the trend, if you just keep in it, it's heavy and it's hard, but this is just going to keep happening. You like plateau for a second.
Yeah.
Plateau.
How can you step away? And sometimes being in a different situation where you're only worrying about yourself is the best thing for you. And it's not a decision anybody makes lightly, but we've got to take care of ourselves. And if somebody we love really needs help and they're not willing to seek that help
after you've shown them
the
water, you cannot force the horse to drink.
Another horse analogy.
Horse girl. No, I'm just kidding. Not a horse girl.
One of these days I'm going to put together all of Val's analogy into just like, I'm probably not going to do that. But
no,
it would be fun.
But someone should for my funeral. That'd be good. Hopefully it's a long time away.
Yeah, hopefully it's a long time.
AI by that point will probably listen for my voice, hear this, and then just do it for me. They'll like send it to the spaceship.
We're probably close to that. Anyway, so this has been a bit of a heavy topic, but definitely one that needed to be shared. So we are glad you've been here. And if you have an ADHDer in your life who's got some financial challenges, send them a link to our podcast. We've got lots of episodes that can help them, specifically the one on ADHD and budgeting, and a recent one on getting out of the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, which could also significantly help them. So,
and we love you for being loving to them.
Yes. It's great to have people in our lives that want to support us.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for being here, and we can't wait to see you next time on the Mind and Money Podcast.